Hello, my friends. Lori Ashcraft here. I'm your host for Viva La Evolution, which is produced by Recovery and Resilience Solutions, which is a training and consulting branch of Crestwood Behavioral Health. So, welcome to another podcast. We have a really interesting guest today that I've gotten to know over the last year and so admired and respected. Her name is Shanel. You're going to hear an amazing recovery journey that started, when she was really just a child, a journey through a lot of tough times that went on into her mid-20s. And then her recovery journey really began. And since then, she's had so many wonderful accomplishments and made such an amazing contribution. It's stories like this that just remind us that we can recover from just about anything. If we get the right people around us supporting us, believing in us, we have some opportunities to give back, we get support from other people. It's so possible and so probable. I just don't want to settle for anything less, no matter what it might show up like. And you've seen over the last few months, you've seen folks come back from pretty dire circumstances and be in a position to make wonderful contributions. So this is just another one of those cases, special and unique because Shanel has an amazing story. Everyone's story is a little different, but it leaves us with the hope and the inspiration for knowing that we're doing the right thing in this work. So, okay, here we go. Let's hear from Shanel. Well, Shanel, I'm so happy you had time to talk with us this morning. I'm really anxious to have you share your story with us because I know you've had quite a trip, and also the very interesting work you're doing at Crestwood. I think you're involved with some things that are extremely unique that I'm really excited about sharing with our viewers. So thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
I'm happy to have you. I know you had to drop your 2-year-old off this morning and race back home. So thanks for that too.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's always a busy morning over here.
Yeah. Well, let's start with telling us a little bit about your story. Your story of recovery, and those stories always include some of the tough times that we recovered from. So you don't have to hold anything back with us.
Okay. At the age of 13, my mom was going through the change of life, also drinking pretty heavily, and I was going through what 13-year-old girls go through. And we had a pretty rocky relationship up until that point. So I decided that I was going to save up my lunch money and hop on a train and come to San Diego and see what it would be like to live with my fun dad. So flash forward, I'm 13, I'm on the train, the coaster, and I'm moving in with dad, and dad still wants to be the Disneyland dad, even though he's full-time. So the freedom that came with that was vast and abundant. I went from not having friends and not going out at all to my dad handing me $50, telling me my curfew was 12 o'clock at midnight, and, just kind of going with that. And so I started making connections with folks in school that were older than me, had a little bit more life experience than I had. And, physically, I'm a pretty tall woman.
Yes.
I was 5'9". I was heavier set early in high school, freshman year. So I looked a lot older than I actually was.
Yeah.
And so hanging out with the older folks worked for me. It didn't look off. It didn't feel, off. And what came with that was a lot of experimenting. I think I would say my first drink of alcohol, I'm Irish, Polish. And so my family drinks, they always have. They're from Chicago. Bars were a big thing growing up that for them.
Yeah.
And so I remember like tasting sips of families' drinks here and there at younger ages, but or like actually drinking on my own, I would say started when I moved to San Diego in my freshman year of high school. Along with that, very, very quickly came the use of marijuana. And they say gateway drugs, it's a gateway drug. And for me, that is 100% true. It really put me into situations or in groups of people where other drugs were present. I've always been a energetic person. I like to be active and engage. I'm not really the kind of person that likes to just like a homebody, I guess you would say, especially kind of in at that age, kind of experimenting and getting out of what I was the situation at my mom's house where I didn't leave and I wasn't going out with friends. Now I get to go out and I didn't really want to be sitting at home. I wanted to be exploring the world. So pretty soon, even I would say 6 months, I was introduced to some drugs that were a little bit heavier. And I started my drug of choice at 14, and I knew that that was my drug of choice as soon as I tried that drug. I immediately it had me in its grasp. I started using every weekend, I noticed a lot of weight loss from this drug. I had a lot of energy. It motivated me to do homework. I got to stay out all night and stay awake all night on the weekends. And that kind of stayed the consistent, just kind of using this drug every weekend with friends. And when I say friends, I'm 14 at the time. The people that I was kind of hanging around with were 19, maybe 20. And that I would say that was consistent for the rest of my freshman year until I hit my sophomore year. And that summer right before sophomore year, I really dove into kind of the drug scene in Chula Vista. I proceeded to return to school and really not ever go to class. I remember making up stories why I was not able to go. I said that my dad was ill and I had to take care of him. I would rush.
Isn't that, addictions will make a liar out of everybody. I've had my own spin with addictions and have been in 12-step groups for years and years. And it's about me and about everybody else in the room. We just make up these stories to support the addiction. We get really good at it.
Finally, those lies caught up with me junior year. And I ended up in the learning center, and it was a really kind of a messed up system in my opinion, looking back. The learning center was an option for students who were struggling to attend school or struggling with grades in school. And I think for some, students, this was a beneficial program. For me, all it required me to do was go to school for 2 hours a day, and then I could be free to do whatever I wanted. So it was kind of just an enabler for me to continue the lifestyle that I was doing while still going towards my high school diploma. I'm going to flash forward. So like my whole high school career was a lot of heartbreak for my dad. My dad eventually found out that was telling my school that he was sick. It broke his heart. He would wake up in the mornings and I wouldn't be there. I would have snuck out and he would be so worried. I remember him being so worried and very proud man. So would never show me any emotion as far as tears, but I knew 100% that he was very upset and crying in private because he was so worried about me. I did end up graduating from this learning center in my high school or my senior year.
Yeah.
At this time, I'm 18 and I'm in a relationship, one of my first relationships, serious relationships with a 28-year-old man. And this man, early on in the relationship, um, became very abusive. So very, very uh, um, abusive in every form that you can think of. That's the abuse that I was on the receiving end of. Um, and because of my self-esteem, my self-worth, or lack thereof, I stayed in the relationship. I
Are you
didn't really.
still using?
I'm using nonstop.
Okay.
Yes, never stopped. My drug of choice. I stopped drinking alcohol. I stopped using marijuana because it interfered with my drug of choice. I wanted to be awake. I wanted to never miss a beat. And my drug of choice allowed me to do that. Obviously, like every drug, it was progressive in that I had to keep using more and more and more to maintain that lifestyle,
Mhm.
if that's what you want to call it. Um, but he was using along with me, this boyfriend of mine. It was a very toxic situation. This relationship lasted 5 years.
Mm.
Um, in and out of abuse. My dad, I had to go had reconstruction surgery on my face because of some of the situations that had happened. So my dad was very aware of the abuse, very against the relationship. But again, I tell stories for a living at this point, right? I make up scenarios and get people to believe me. So I had my dad convinced that I was no longer, with this man, and I was safe, and I'm doing everything I need to do, Dad. So please continue to let me stay here and live here. Meanwhile, I'm living the life of an addict at the time, somebody addicted. Um, my first time kind of with this lifestyle catching up to me was when I graduated high school. My dad took me to the fair of all places. It was that time of year. The fair here in San Diego happens around the end of school year, June.
Yeah.
And my dad gave me all this money because he was so proud I had graduated, even though it was the learning center. He knew I struggled, and he was so proud of me. And so he sent me on my way to the fair with a friend, and all this money as a graduation present. Well, as doing what a person addicted to drugs does, I took all that money and I bought drugs, and I went to the fair, and I proceeded to use the drugs in the bathroom of the fair, and got caught. I got caught.
Uh,
I
uh,
got Yeah. The officers at the fair, I had no idea they had a whole police station at the fair at the time. Um, they came, they handcuffed me, found the drugs that I had left still that I hadn't used yet, and then walked me through the fair handcuffed. I remember such a shameful moment. Um, uh, just kind of walking through all the kids looking at me as if I'm an attraction, pointing like, "What's going on, mom?"
yeah.
And that was my first arrest, my first experience with the judicial system.
And you're
Um,
18 at this point.
18, yeah. I mean, story short, the next, let's see, 18 to 22, so 4 years, included a whirlwind of um, mandated drug treatment programs, 7 arrests for multiple things. Again, I'm still stealing. My dad has cut all ties with me at this point. Asked me to leave the house, is no longer communicating with me. I'm still, in this relationship back and forth with this person who is abusive towards me. Kind of coming in and out of that relationship, as I need to be in that relationship. So kind of using him as a place to stay, or somebody to take care of me while I'm coming off of my drugs and I need to eat or I need to sleep, and then sneaking out and taking off for months at a time, and then coming back and just living the lifestyle of what I knew to be somebody addicted to and living on the streets. I was homeless multiple times throughout these 4 years, sleeping at laundromats, sleeping at trolley stations, doing whatever I needed to do. And it's interesting the trauma that comes with all of this. So it's just I put myself in these situations. There's trauma that occurs sometimes, oftentimes, and then I continue to use more so that I don't have to feel that trauma. And when I'm doing that, I'm putting myself back in these situations where more trauma happens. It's just this horrible cycle.
Yes. Yeah.
At this time, I'm like becoming almost what the recovery world of Narcotics Anonymous calls a trash can junkie, right? Those labels, trash can junkie, where I'm just using anything that anybody puts in front of me just so that I don't have to feel. Obviously, I have a drug of choice, and this is my preferred method of not feeling. But if that drug is not available, I'm going to use anything and everything that I can to not feel these feelings and to not feel this sense of vulnerability and emptiness and feeling alone. Um, uh, Luckily, my higher power intervened, and he put me into a treatment program. This would be the 6th treatment program I had been in. It's a county funded um, behavior modification program. When I say behavior modification, when I went through this program, it's very simple. It's very much what you're thinking when you hear behavior modification. My experience now in recovery, it's very demeaning. Honestly, it's a
Yes.
set up. I was, you're forced to sit and be yelled at. You can't. There's no coping skills. We were put on these things called monads, mouth on non-active duty, where you can't speak to anybody, and exiles if you break a rule, where you have to sit and for 24
Yeah.
hours read the rule books, all these things.
Yes. I interviewed uh, a friend of mine, Chris Bartz, a while back, and his story has some similarities to yours. A different start point, but heavy into drugs, um, alcohol, treatment programs, a lot of homelessness, and then ending up in a program much like you're describing. And he described it as um, like if anything would have made him more addictive, it would have been that program, because it took away the part of him that he needed to recover. It took away his strengths, his self-esteem, those little positive things we can hold on to try and pull ourselves back together. It took all that away.
Yeah.
He said it really set back his recovery, and I can kind of hear that in your story too.
Yeah. I mean, I adore the connections that I made. I still have them in my life today. These women that I met and connected with, and just amazing individuals. And and it was very much break you down
Yeah.
type model to build you up. And that's exactly what it did. So I say it was my 6th time in treatment. I was in treatment 7 times, because when I left that treatment program, I didn't follow the suggestions that were given to me to stay away from the places and the people. I'm so sorry. Uh, and and I went back to my dad, and within 3 weeks, I was back to, the same cycle that I had left.
Mhm.
But this time, I did have a taste of recovery. I did have, what I really kind of attribute to the beginning of my recovery and what really stuck was connecting with people and those relationships that I made, and the genuine kind of love that recovery brings. And just there's really a true sense of feeling love for the first time.
And during that treatment period, were you using?
In treatment, no. So this was you could
Okay.
not leave this facility. It was not that type of facility where I could come and go.
Yeah.
They drug tested us regularly. In fact, they would wake us up at 5 o'clock in the morning to drug test regularly.
So this could be the first time as an adult that you were clear enough to actually feel something and
Yes.
actually
Outside of
experience a real relationship.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Outside of the jails that I had been in, prisons that I had been in, the last time I had been incarcerated, I did a year straight.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and those connections made in that type of setting are not the same. They're not recovery focused. In fact, you're kind of learning how to not get caught next time is
Yeah.
kind of the conversations that we would have, and the connections we would make. So yes, this was the first time that I connected with people, women specifically, which was a huge, that was a major,
Yeah.
uh, like game changer for me, was connecting with women in recovery.
And
Um,
we know that connections, sorry for interrupting you. I just want to shine the light on a couple things you're saying and not gloss over it too much. We know that connection with ourself first, and my hunch is you started to get a feeling of yourself during that period. Sometimes we get that just by connecting with someone else. It bounces off of us, and then we go, oh, that's me in there that's connecting with you. And it's when
exactly.
you get that going on. Something that I found when I used to teach peer support classes all the time, and it would be like the turning, and I always believed in the folks in my class. I mean, it was just a naive kind of believing. And I think that came from me knowing that I recovered, that I was in a recovery process. So if I can recover, these people can recover. So I just assumed they were all going to, continue their recovery process and get better and better. So I believed in them and their strengths. And that seemed to be, I mean, the class was probably pretty good, but I don't think it was the class. I think it was me believing in them, and then them believing in themselves, and then believing in each other. So it kind of created a community, a little like you're describing in that sixth facility you were in.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
so important.
Yeah, it really is. And I think you're talking, you mentioned peer support, and it's so important because I wasn't introduced to peer support until, I started working at Crestwood, which I'll go to. But like looking back, and I still attend recovery groups today, Narcotics Anonymous groups. It's my foundation. It's where I began my recovery journey. And we have a reading where it states, one addict can best help and can best understand and help another addict.
Mhm, mhm.
And
Yeah,
and that is peer support.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And it started with the whole 12-step movement. So, it was a different birth, but same kind of mentality.
right, right.
So you got into the seventh program now.
It's
And
just, so I went back to the same program because
okay, okay.
because at that moment I knew that there was something that had changed. So I had been in and out of, so seven apparently is my number, because I was incarcerated 7 different times. I was in treatment facilities 7 different times, 6 different treatment facilities, one of them twice. So
Okay.
I chose to go back to my home, is what I call it. I still call it that today. Because it was the place I could go to no matter what. Even after I completed treatment, I would go back as a graduate,
Yeah.
and if I needed to, which there were times that I did, I could sleep on the couch. I could eat whatever I needed to do. The door was always open for me as long as I was clean and sober. And so I decided that before probation got caught up with me again and told me I had to go back, I decided that I was going to take myself back. And I
Uh-huh.
did.
Good.
I, I took myself back. And I took myself back. It was so humbling because I remember discharging uh, from there. And, at that time I was an upper phase, woman in the house. I had a job, and I was going out a lot, and all the women looked up to me, and I was their role model, they said. And we had this process of, when you discharge, all of the women come around you, they give you a goodbye group, and they tell you how proud they are of you and how amazing you're going to do. And, you're such a role model to all of us, and we can't wait to be like you when we discharge. And so 3 weeks later, here I come with my tail between my legs. In that,
That was a good lesson too. I mean, they could see that when you get in trouble, you come back.
yes. And at the time, that's not where my head was. Looking back, absolutely. Humility is so important today in my life. And I was so ashamed.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it was that there was no judgment. Whether there didn't seem to be any judgment. There was no judgment presented to me. I was welcomed back. In fact, the director of the program, when I called and asked if I could come back, said, "Come home."
Yeah.
And so I came back, and they kept me a little bit longer that time, 167 days. And we counted them. And this time I followed suggestions. But
how did you end up at Crestwood?
And so a friend of mine from my treatment program was working as a business office manager at Crestwood in San Diego. At the time, they were a 41-bed facility. And I'm in psychology, very, very, again, very part-time, not too far into my degree, about halfway, but I've been in it for about 6-7 years.
Well, you had 2 kids to raise too, so there's
yeah. And so I come to apply, and the administrator there at the time, they were hiring for a position called the service coordinator. And the service coordinator, almost like a case manager, it has a caseload of individuals that they support. It was significantly less at the time than I was making as a server. Servers, shout out to every server that might be listening or has ever worked in the restaurant industry. We hustle but we make good money. It's a good job. But I really wanted to make a difference, and I didn't feel like I was doing that in my server position. I was making a difference for the hour that they were sitting there for dinner, but after that, not so much. And so I decided to take the position, and I was hired. And it was interesting because I had 2 other people that were hired along with me for service coordinator positions. One of them has a equivalent of a master's degree, but is a doctorate in a different country. And they had all this education, and I graduated the learning center. And at the time, my self-esteem was a lot better, but I still was surrounded by people with a lot of education in a field I had never worked in. So it was very intimidating for me. And I was hired, which was huge. Yeah. And I was hired not only because of, I wasn't hired because of my education, because I didn't have it at the time. I was hired because of my lived experience. Yeah. And because I was in recovery, and because I had that lens that maybe the other people around me with the education piece didn't have.
Yeah, it's so important. And you went to the school of hard knocks.
Yeah, exactly. And it was the first time ever that I had been valued for that experience instead of looked down upon.
That is so key, isn't it? I mean, that's what we say in peer support. It gives you an opportunity to use all that experience, all those rough times. They start to make sense now because, I learned so much in that, and now I can give back from that point of view.
Exactly. It was really validating and encouraging for me. And yes, I was hired because of that that experience. And Crestwood still has their protocols, and I still had to go through the background check. And at first I did not get approved. So luckily my charges and cases that I had were far enough in the past, and I guess not as severe, that with time and support from community partners, I was able to get cleared. But during that time, that process of probation that I was on while that was happening, I wasn't allowed to be alone with any people that we served. I had to have kind of a staff chaperone,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
here we go with humility again, right?
Yes.
Uh, I've been with the company 6 months, and now I have to go and ask my coworkers, my peers, hey, can you come support me so that I can do my job?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did it because I I really felt that I was making a difference. And during this time, so what had happened was I mentioned earlier that I was a member of my alumni for my treatment program, and we did all these events for the people in the houses. When I started at Crestwood San Diego, the intention of my hire, along with a lot of the other people, was that we were going to open the Chula Vista campus, but it hadn't been built yet.
Mhm.
So when I started at the San Diego campus, knowing that I was hired as a service coordinator, I was introduced to recreation through a recreational therapist that was there. I had no idea that that existed, and it was something I was already doing, was supporting
Mm.
people and
Mm.
reminding them the importance of fun and leisure in recovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I found out that this was a job, and a career and a degree opportunity, I knew that this was a meant to be thing.
Fun.
This was a God thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I switched my degree at that moment. At that moment, I said, "I'm this is what I'm supposed to do." So
Mhm.
I went. I was already halfway through my psychology bachelor's degree, but I said I want to switch to recreational therapy. I went to the Chula Vista campus, opened the Chula Vista campus as a recreation assistant while going for my rec therapy degree.
Mhm.
And through a lot of hard work and a lot of change in positions, I used the Crestwood scholarship. I got my rec degree, my bachelor's degree in recreational therapy. I got certified as a recreational therapist. It was an amazing experience.
How does the Crestwood Scholarship Program work?
So it is a true gift, really. So you apply, and you, as long as the education that you're using it towards goes is kind of focused on your job or a position that would, be at Crestwood. Maybe you're a recovery coach and you're wanting to be a nurse, so you're going for a nursing degree, then you can totally apply for the
I
scholarship.
see. Yeah.
I got approved, no questions asked.
Uh,
It's a reimbursement program, up to 3 years. So every year for 3 years, I was reimbursed $3,000 for my education expenses.
mm.
So
Mm.
it was a really great opportunity, and I took advantage of it twice. So I actually got it for 5 years.
Wow, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And
so yeah,
now what's your degree now?
So I have my bachelor's, and now I'm in a master's program, halfway through, and I'm going for my master's in healthcare administration,
Mm. So was your bachelor's degree in um, recreation therapy? Okay.
therapeutic recreation. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think for me, one of the biggest components of my recovery journey and why it was so successful um, was the connection, like I shared early on, and being able to share those experiences and connecting, not just in recovery meetings or, outpatient therapy groups, but also going and hanging out at the coffee shop after a meeting,
Mhm.
or going bowling, or really learning what I like to do for fun. That was a big thing for me, is when early in recovery people would always say, what do you like to do for fun? I don't know, I have no idea what I like to I used drugs for fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so really figuring out, from the age of 13 when I started using drugs to now, like I have no idea what I enjoy doing. And so I got to kind
Okay.
of
So let me
grow.
ask you this. Sorry again. If you could go back and have a conversation with your 13-year-old self, what would that sound like?
I would
Let's say
I would
14. Let's say 14, because by now you're at your dad's, you're getting money and you're You're starting your career, your street career.
Right.
Looking back, what would you say to yourself at that age?
I I think I would just reinforce that I'm worth it.
Yeah.
That I'm worth it. I look back and I know that I am the where I am today, and I love where I am today, um, because of, or in spite of, but also because of all those life experiences that have put me on the journey to where I am today,
Mhm.
and have allowed me to be able to have a story that I can use to connect with people. And that is what I'm so passionate about, I think, is because there's people in our programs at Crestwood, but really everywhere, in institutions, in outpatient programs, at the grocery store,
Yeah.
that are struggling
Mhm.
and feel the same way I felt,
Yeah.
that, you know, I'm alone, and
Well,
to
and
be able
you
to,
use the word lonely a lot too. You
yeah,
know, that feeling of just being so alone, and that kind of, it's that lonesome feeling is just painful, really
yeah.
painful. Well,
Eh,
let's talk a little bit. Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
no, that's okay.
I was thinking, let's talk a little bit about what you do now with the Real Team. I think that's such a unique project at Crestwood, and they've had it going for a long time, I know, but it's still extremely unique.
Yeah. So I actually left Crestwood for a short time. I left the campus. I went to another opportunity as a program director at another behavioral health facility here in San Diego. Um, and I got a call from a former Crestwood coworker, and they were letting me know that this position had popped up on the Real Team. What's the Real Team? Well, we're peers, we're people with lived experience, and we work with the home office, and we support um, the person served kind of viewpoint at that level, across the organization, and we're hiring. And so my heart never really left Crestwood. And so I immediately jumped on the opportunity, and I applied, and I joined the Real Team in 2021. And so what is the Real Team? In my viewpoint, we are people with lived experience. We are the voice of those individuals that we serve across the state of California at the level that is necessary to support change. But really, one of my favorite things about the Real Team is that I know for myself, there was a packet, I'm sure there still is somewhere, a background check, right? It came in when they did my background check. There's a packet of information that comes along with me that just has all of these things that are wrong with me, all of the felonies and all of the things that I did wrong. And I didn't even get into my behavior or my mental health journey. When I when I when I was working at Crestwood, I after my third son, I really started struggling with postpartum depression that didn't go away. And I knew that it had nothing to do with drugs because I had been off of drugs for so long. Um, and so I had that kind of dual recovery journey going for me as well. And so all that paperwork from all of the doctors and hospitals that I had visited for that, all the medications that I'm taking, and all of these things, it's just like a, a stack of papers of what's wrong with me. What I love about the Real Team is that we are an opportunity for our folks to share their why. So our folks at our facilities, they come in and they have a packet of information just like I do, and it's telling their story for them. We have a storytelling series. The Real Team has an opportunity twice a month for our folks at all the campuses to come and share their stories. And it's really an opportunity for them to share their why from their own words.
I
And
think you do that on Zoom, don't you? So people from all different campuses can
yeah,
join it.
yes, there's been times where we have like 20 programs
Uh,
with 10, 20, sometimes 30 folks in each room, in each little Zoom square. There's like
yeah.
20 folks in that square, and they're all listening and sharing and connecting across the state of California, from Eureka to Chula Vista.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful because all we do is provide that space. Sometimes we provide questions to encourage folks to start the conversation. But they take the lead 100%. In fact, there's times where we can't even introduce the question because people are up there sharing, hands raised, I want to share, and then I want to connect with that person. And that was really a good story. I'm glad you shared that. Thank you. And that encourages me to share next time. And it's such a beautiful thing. And then we have folks that are so brave and volunteer to share their story of recovery. And they'll come up and share their experience and their strength with hundreds of people across the state of California. It's such a beautiful experience.
Well,
And
R.E.A.L is an acronym for something, isn't it?
yes, it is. So it stands for recovery, education, advocacy, and leadership.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And we always keep it real.
Yeah. Yeah. I know one of your members started a whole movement at Crestwood a year or two ago. This was Ruth. Not 1 minute more.
Yes.
Not 1 minute more on conservatorship, that if you don't need it, not 1 minute more in our facility, not 1 minute more if you need to move on to a different group in the facilities. Was kind of a slogan that got applied to a lot of things.
It's game changing. It's game changing. I'm actually a part of that committee, and I supported Ruth with that. And what that really is an opportunity for us as an organization to take a look at how we can do better, because we need to do better.
Yeah.
And we could always do better.
Of course,
And
yes.
yeah. And so what are we doing to get people out quicker? And to not keep anybody any longer than we absolutely have to. And COVID happens and everything gets shut down, and it creates this barrier. And we could use that as an excuse to say, hey, we don't, there's no place to go. And COVID is still, the after effects of COVID are stopping us. But with our Not 1 Minute More initiative, it's really like no excuses.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Shanel, for joining us. Are there things that you didn't get a chance to share that you think would be helpful for our viewers?
I one small story, and it's just interesting for me because I at this time I had worked in Crestwood, I would say about 4 years, maybe 5. I had been through a lot of training. Something so beautiful that Crestwood offers is all of the amazing training opportunities and education. And for me, never having experience in the field before, I latched on and took in every resource I could. Like I shared earlier that, I had at that time I had my 3rd son, and the postpartum depression that I had experienced before with my other kids, that this time was a lot different. And I was in a place, it wasn't going away. And so I was in a place where, like the individuals that I was supporting, I needed to support myself, and I reached out to whoever I could reach out to, not work affiliated, through my insurance, and they were booked. And they referred me over here, and they couldn't support me. And I ended up one day in the emergency room because I didn't know what else to do. And the lady told me she was going to refer me to a different emergency room. They could support me. They had a psychiatrist there that would be able to support me. And she told me the name of that psychiatrist, and it was our psychiatrist at Crestwood.
Oh,
shout out to Dr. G. And so that shame kicked in. That shame kicked in of that stigma, right? That stigma that I had proud. I was so proud to fight that stigma, and now here I am, and it's on me, and I'm just like so ashamed to go see a doctor that I work with, and for him to know my experience. And I didn't go. I did not go. And so I wanted to share that just because today I'm proud of my experiences. Like I shared, both of my recovery experiences. It took me a long time to be proud of my my drug and alcohol recovery experience, and now I'm becoming proud of my mental health recovery.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I really want to highlight all of the tools that recovery has provided me, have made me who I am today, and I'm so proud of that person.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I'm proud of you too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so very much. I just wish you the best. Thank you for sharing your experience and wisdom with our viewers. That's very inspiring. So I'll see
Thank,
you around.
thank
And
you, Lori. Have a good day.
okay. Well, thank you for joining us again. I hope you were inspired and hopeful, and know that what you do, if you're a service provider, know that what you do does make a huge difference. And know that if you're a person trying to recover, it's so possible and probable. It happens all the time. So thanks for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.